And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, my beautiful co-host, Laraib, as we are here to break down week 5 of the NFL season, Laraib. 5 weeks of NFL football coming up very shortly. First round of bye weeks this week. So we do not have games from the Lions, Titans, Eagles, and Chargers this week. Um, just getting into that middle part of the season where really teams start to separate themselves from the pack. And some of the teams who we thought might not have a chance, or teams who, just stop believing in themselves and really start to slide too, Larob. So this is the time, in the beginning of the season, everyone thinks they're a playoff team. Everyone thinks they can go to the Super Bowl. But now it's settling in for some teams like, maybe not. And some other teams who maybe thought less about, hey, we're a good team. Let's roll. Let's keep this thing going. So much can change here. Week 5. A lot of courses are being set right now. And I'm just super excited to get into these games.
Yeah, huge implications that these early games in the season can have. If you're looking down at the stat sheet and you're thinking, this was an easy win we could have had in week 5 that has some playoff implications for you later on in the season, there's a lot of head scratchers that can happen. And so let's go ahead and jump right into our week 5 picks, Lewis. We have our first international game. We have the Jets traveling to the Vikings in London. We have the Vikings favored at a nice -2.5 in or across the pond. Who do you got, Lewis?
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of very interesting matchups in this game. Most notably, the best corner in the game, Sauce Gardner, arguably the best corner. I mean, I think him and Pat Surtain are 1 and 2. And shout out to our boy Trent McDuffie. Um, and then obviously Justin Jefferson, the best wide receiver in the NFL. Unless you only look at football through a fantasy football lens. Even then, Jefferson's still pretty dang good. Few things to note in this game. Yeah, obviously, like you said, first international game. Technically a Vikings home game, but that doesn't really matter. Vikings at 4-0, only getting 2.5 points on basically a neutral field side against this Jets team with a lot of, just chaos this season. Our offense has been up and down. They had a good performance against the Patriots, followed it up with a really disappointing performance against the Broncos last week. And now you're facing the hottest defense in the NFL, the Vikings, who lead the NFL with 14 sacks, I believe, lead the NFL in takeaways. Brian Flores. I mean, you look at the offenses that they're beating. They beat the Texans. They beat down the Texans, beat down the 49ers, and we're pretty much beating down the Packers, if not letting their foot off the gas in the final half of the game and allowing the Packers to make the score look a lot more respectable than it really was. So there's not a lot of confidence I have in this in this Jets offense, that I think they can really go up against this Brian Flores led defense. It's just all 3 levels of the defense for this Vikings team. And just the struggles from this offensive line, Tyron Smith allowing 3 sacks the last 3 weeks, just a big problem, especially when you have guys like Jonathan Greenard who've been playing amazing. Van Ginkel, it's just a new guy stepping up every single week, this Brian Flores scheme. So I just have a really tough time seeing how the Packers are going to get sustained drives against this Vikings front. Whereas, I'll let you hit on the Minnesota side of things, but I have more confidence in what they've been able to do offensively, Kevin O'Connell. But I got to lean Vikings here in this matchup, Rob.
Yeah, and I have to agree. Sam Darnold leads the league in touchdown passes. He has 11. No one else has double digits. And then, this Vikings defense on the secondary, they've given up I think they're top 5 in yards allowed. And that's kind of a misleading stat because whenever you're up 30 points in a game, the other team is just going to be humming the ball down the field. And that kind of inflates those numbers to make it look like, oh, they're really bad passing offense, but they've been dominating. And what's been really scary for this Jets team has been the offensive line, like you mentioned. And if Brian Flores dials up that blitz and they get after Aaron Rodgers, I think this game can get very ugly very fast. Just how this Minnesota Vikings team's gotten to a fast start, they can do it again in this one. It just looks like to me Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to get hit. And that's understandable, right? For a guy who's 40 plus years old who thought, okay, we're going to revamp this offensive line. I'm going to have a lot more time in the pocket. And it just hasn't been the case for him this season besides that Patriots game. And so I like the Vikings in the spot. Aaron Jones has been playing outstanding. I think if he can just keep on gashing this Jets run defense, this Vikings team is in for a huge day. I like the Vikings to win 26-20 in London.
Yeah, and then my score, I'm going with the Vikings. I'm going 23 to Jets 13. I can't see a way that they sustain drives. Like you said, I don't believe Aaron Rodgers. He's just his lack to really take a lot of risks. That's kind of and make those throws. It just against this type of defense, this early on in the season, there's still a lot of disconnect there. Make sure he has the snap right, the cadence right, or Robert Saleh is going to lose his mind. So yeah, I'm going with the Vikings 23-13. Let's go ahead now and move on to our noon highlighted games. We have two pretty awesome games in this noon slate, Laura. We have the Baltimore Ravens traveling to Cincy to face the Bengals. Baltimore favored by 2.5 at Cincinnati. And, Cincinnati picking up their first win of the season to move to 1-3. Baltimore has won 2 in a row. Two teams that we were, kind of not panicking, but wondering, when they're going to get their mojo. It seemed like the Ravens got it back. Offense, defense, they've been humming. The Bengals offense looks like they've gotten their rhythm back, but there's still a lot of problems with this Cincinnati defense, Laura. And I want to ask you specifically, what has changed with the Cincinnati defense, and could they bounce back against a division opponent?
What has changed? I mean, they didn't lose like too many of their big names over the offseason. They kept their defensive coordinator. And so it just looks like they just aren't, or they're just not showing up to play, really. And the big thing is they're giving up 145 yards on the ground. And that is going to be a no-go when you're facing this Ravens rushing attack. But then on the other side, it's the Ravens secondary who's given up 250 yards to the air. And that's also a huge red flag when you're facing Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase. And so it's just going to depend on, is the Ravens rushing attack going to come out on top, or is it going to be this Bengals air raid offense who's going to get it done? And I think I'm leaning with the home team in this one. Joe Burrow is 3-1 in his last 4 games against the Ravens, including the playoffs. I think there's a huge spot for them at home to pick up a nice quality win against a divisional opponent. And I just trust that Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase will get it done in this one.
Yeah, I think the key to this game is who strikes first, because I believe that the Baltimore Ravens can build a lead, lean on that running game, lean on Derrick Henry, who's been just so good the past 2 weeks, leading the league in rushing. Just a timeless wonder, Derrick Henry is. And if they can build up a lead and then get their pass rushers teed off on Joe Burrow, force them to make a lot of mistakes at home, or they're, we saw against the Commanders, like if they just can't stop the Ravens offense, then it doesn't matter. You can't have any mistakes offensively, no missed field goals, no settling for field goals. It has to be touchdowns. It has to be red zone efficiency. And this Baltimore defense, they've been able to get moved on, but they've actually been pretty decent in the red zone, top 10 in red zone defense efficiency. So I think if they can hold the Bengals to field goals instead of touchdowns, and they can get this run game going against, like you mentioned, a very porous Bengals rush defense, then I think the Ravens can replicate the success they've had the past 2 weeks. Now, this is a must win for Cincinnati. So I'm hesitant in this one. I really think it could go either way. That's why I preface it by saying who strikes first, because if the Bengals get up to a lead and force the Ravens to throw the ball, then I think you're in a dangerous territory for the Ravens. But I have more faith in the well-roundedness of this Ravens team than I do in just the lack of authority from this Bengals defense that I've seen so far in the season. So I am leaning Ravens here. I think it's going to be a late touchdown by the Bengals, makes it look closer than it is. A Justin Tucker field goal seals the game. I'm going Ravens 26 to Bengals 20.
And I'm going Bengals 33-30. You can tell me this Raven has a better roster, and I would agree with you. But you can't tell me that Joe Burrow is not going to go out there, sling the rock, make it a close game, and who knows what will happen. So give me the Bengals at home.
All right, Laraib, let's go ahead and move on to another awesome noon game. We have the Buffalo Bills traveling to Houston to face the Texans. Buffalo favored by 1 point on the road. Back-to-back road games against tough AFC opponents. Following their loss last week against the Ravens, looking to bounce back here against a familiar opponent, and one Stephon Diggs, who's been circling this game on his calendar since the trade was made to send him to Houston. So I'm expecting him to have a huge chip on his shoulder to prove to the Bills that he is valuable and that they let go the wrong guy, as you could say. But I think this is a very interesting matchup because I know you are very not low on the Texans, but lower than the populace. Um, just they haven't been that efficient so far. And there's just been questions offensively. They have the skill guys, but they haven't really been able to put it all together for a full game yet. Whereas we've seen that with the Buffalo Bills so far. But I think in this spot for the Texans, what I saw from them on that last drive against Jacksonville, when CJ Stroud, calm, cool, and collected, 4 minutes left in the game, they're down by 3, goes down the field. And you just kind of had a feeling with CJ, even though it's his second year as a starter, just you had the confidence that he was going to go down and get the job done. And I think I had that confidence at home that they can, do a lot against this Bills defense, which was exposed last week. Now, I believe, Laraib, that there's still no Joe Mixon for this game. I don't know if you know any news about
He
Mixon's
didn't
status.
practice on Wednesday, and so I think he's still a game time decision. And that's really the big thing for me in this game. What this Texans offense has been missing has been that rushing attack, and why they've been so one piece, just trying to throw the ball as much as they can. Not that one piece, one dimensional, I should say. And so that's why I really lean Buffalo in this game. If they can't run the ball like the Ravens did on Sunday night, then I think the Bills are in a great spot. If they can't get a great pass rush like the Ravens did on Sunday night, I still think they're in a great spot. Now, Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter have been one of the great additions of the offseason, but they still haven't shown to me that they can be that huge wrecking force that can turn around a game so far throughout the season. They did it to Caleb Williams in week 2, but besides that, they haven't really shown up for me or jumped off the page. And so that's why I'm really leaning Josh Allen and his legs in this one.
Yeah, the middle of that Buffalo defense was exposed last week against Baltimore, not through the air, but on the ground. So Joe Mixon's status in the game is a really big deal. But I just feel like whether or not he's going to play, I still think that this Houston offense is clever enough to scheme up things against this Buffalo defense. Without Von Miller, he's starting his suspension that just came down. So definitely a weakened defensive front. And those Houston offensive lines had a lot of issues so far. So I am a little concerned, Gregory Rousseau, Ed Oliver up front for the Buffalo Bills, that they could cause some havoc against this Houston offensive line. But at home, I just think that the Texans, Nico Collins has been outstanding this season. Him and Stephon Diggs just ruling the middle of the field. They can get sustained drives. And this Houston defense has been very good so far. I think they forced Josh Allen into some mistakes. And I think that Houston can get the win over Buffalo in this game. Stephon Diggs puts in the dagger, 30-27, Laraib.
I also have it written down 30-27, Lewis, but I think that the Bills also had this game circled after getting that cancer out of their locker room, after getting that diva out of their locker room. They said, let's go ahead and show them what a real
Gabe
football
Davis?
team looks like. Give me the Bills 30-27 as they roll in Houston.
All right, 2 awesome games. Let's go ahead now and move all the way to Sunday Night Football, where we have America's team, the Pittsburgh Steelers, hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Pittsburgh -2.5 at home. Laura, just a big thing in this game to note: no Micah Parsons, no DeMarcus Lawrence. Even having that mini bye following Thursday Night Football, they still won't be able to go. DeMarcus Lawrence placed on IR, so he's going to be missing a lot of time. Micah Parsons definitely not playing this week, but there's optimism surrounding his return sometime in the next few weeks. But just knowing that for this game, these guys won't be there really changes the calculus for me on what to think about this Dallas defense, which has already been very, very underwhelming, especially against the rush, where you could say that's Pittsburgh's biggest strength. Not that their offense has many strengths, but, Justin Fields, Najee Harris, well, we saw kind of what the Ravens blueprint was. Read option them to death. Just their defensive ends were really biting on these fakes, on these RPO actions, which is a big staple of this Arthur Smith, Justin Fields offense that they've been able to execute so far. And I think Justin Fields, he had a few mistakes against Indianapolis last week, but I thought it was his best game overall. 2 rushing touchdowns, really finding guys out in the open. George Pickens really dropped a few essential balls, especially one in the red zone that they definitely could have had. But I think this, Justin Fields is the solidified starter in Pittsburgh. I think he's earned that so far through 4 weeks. And I just feel like this is a really good matchup for this Pittsburgh team, that if they get up, they roll into a lead, this Pittsburgh defense we saw Pittsburgh's defense, their biggest weakness last week was defending in the run. Jonathan Taylor was just eating them alive. But good news, Jonathan Taylor doesn't play for Dallas. In fact, there's not a competent running back playing for Dallas. Rico Dowdle, completely different team in Pittsburgh. Just the threats on the edge. They have to worry about so many things that I don't know if this Dallas offensive line is going to be able to hold up against this Pittsburgh front and the back end as well. Joey Porter Jr. likely matched up against CeeDee Lamb. No Brandon Cooks in this game. He has scary knee infection after a procedure following the Thursday Night Football game. His status definitely out for this game, but just indefinite, time for being out. So scary news there. So they are in dire straits offensively. So I just think this is a really bad spot for this Dallas team going into Pittsburgh. I like Pittsburgh in this one.
Everything is leaning towards Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh rushing, Pittsburgh defense, Pittsburgh, Heinz ketchup. But everything is telling me that Dakota Rain Prescott is going to march into Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football and prove why he should have gotten all that money from Jerry Jones and prove that this Cowboys team is not out of it yet. I really feel like even though this Cowboys team is 2-2, this almost feels like a must-win spot for a schedule that gets very, very tough. Now, I get it. You're on the road, no Brandon Cooks. You're missing 2 key pieces on your defensive line. But I just think this is going to be a race to 20 points. And I think the Cowboys get there first with Dak Prescott. So give me CeeDee Lamb. Give me Ezekiel Elliott munching up all those yards, and give me Dak Prescott. This is going to be a tough battle, defensive battle. I just think the better quarterback comes out on top. I like the Cowboys 20-17. Late, Brandon Aubrey, 65-yarder, seals the deal.
See, I actually like the over in this game. We'll get to that later. But I just feel like that Pittsburgh has a lot of matchups they can exploit defensively, and that Dallas will be getting some, late Brandon Aubrey, just some late scores in this game. So I do have Pittsburgh winning 33 to Dallas 26. I think it's going to be a fun Sunday night game. 2 historic teams facing off. These teams really don't play that much. So when they do, it's always kind of fun to see them play, given the history and everything, the battles between these franchises back in the day that me and Laraib loved watching between Terry Bradshaw and those 70s Dallas teams. But let's go ahead, Laraib. Let's move to Monday Night Football, a battle that's just hurting my heart right now. You have the New Orleans Saints traveling to Kansas City to face the undefeated Chiefs. Chiefs -5.5 in this game. And, looking at this Saints team, it's just the self-inflicted penalties, the mistakes. It's a lot of just, shooting yourself in the foot, because overall, they've been a very good team, well-rounded team. Their offense has been good. When Taysom Hill is in the game and it's looking like he will play against Kansas City, they've just been a really good rushing team. Olave has been playing a lot better the past few weeks, and Rashid Shaheed on the outside. But I just think against this Kansas City Chiefs defense, it's a bad matchup on the road. This Chiefs defense is just a menace against the run. Guys like Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton, these super fast linebackers, sideline to sideline, who are really going to cause a lot of problems for the Saints offensive line, still missing guys like Eric McCoy in this game. So it's going to be a tough battle for the Saints offense to find sustained drives in this game. It's going to be a lot of cheap touchdowns, things like that they need to get in order to stay competitive in this game. Whereas you flip it around, this Chiefs offense has been worse and worse and worse every single week. The only team in NFL history to go 4-0 was scoring less points than the previous week, each consecutive week. So it's just concerning, and especially now that no Rashid Rice, his injury status is still up in the air just for the season-long projection, but we know for this game he will not be playing. And it's just, Travis Kelce had his best game against the Chargers last week. Still doesn't look like the Travis Kelce of old, but you're just relying on a lot of unknowns in this game. Juju Smith-Schuster, Kareem Hunt. So this is a lot on Mahomes' shoulders against a good New Orleans defense, only allowing 4 touchdowns on the season. They've been very sharp. A lot of takeaways from the Saints defense. So I just wanted you to go, Laraib. What is the biggest matchup you're looking for in this game?
It's going to be that Saints offensive line versus that Chiefs defensive line. You hit it right on the start. This front seven for the Chiefs, plays very well throughout this season. And then that front four with Chris Jones, he's just going to wreck this game for Derek Carr, who we've seen a lot of with Derek Carr's time in Las Vegas and Oakland. And so it's just going to be on Derek Carr. It's going to be on Rashid Shaheed. It's going to be on Chris Olave to figure out a way to just get the ball down the field and really open up the middle of the field for those underneath routes and for Alvin Kamara to get some easy yards. If you look at these two teams and you hit their names and you just look at the stats, and one team shows 2-2 and the other team shows 4-0. I would tell you that this Saints team would be the 4-0 team and the Chiefs would be 2-2 the way they have been playing. I think the Chiefs are due for a loss at home. Patrick Mahomes, like you mentioned, is playing worse and worse and worse every week. Now without their best player in Rashee Rice, this is a huge spot for the Saints. I know they don't play very well when they're on the road, and then especially when they're outdoors, when they're not playing in that Caesars Superdome. But this is going to be a great spot for them against the Chiefs team, who just has not looked that impressive to me this season. And so I like the Saints to win this one, 20-17, a defensive battle, but a late Bailey Groupie field goal puts the Saints over the top in this one.
Blake Groupie. But I just you mentioned the Chris Jones thing, and that just gave me flashbacks to how Jalen Carter week 2 for the Eagles just wrecked the Saints offensive game plan. And we know Chris Jones is a far better player than Jalen Carter. Not saying Jalen Carter's a scrub, but Chris Jones has been on a mission this season. We saw how he wrecked the game against the Chargers last week. And against Kansas City, the biggest thing is you can't make mistakes. And this Saints team has just been getting in their way too much, whether it's the muff pump by Rashid Shaheed, whether it's the past 2 weeks playing man in crucial situations and getting burnt on a pass interference call. And then, obviously just miscommunication, guys running into each other, allowing a big play for Dallas Goedert, which also scares me in this game is because, Saints didn't cover the tight ends well. 0 catches to the bust Kyle Pitts. But, Dallas Goedert really found success against the Saints defense. And I think Kelsey could replicate a lot of that same success. Just Andy Reid, how smart this team is. And against the Chiefs, you can't make mistakes. If this team was a little more buttoned up going into this game, I'd feel more confident. But I am leaning Kansas City in this game. My heart really wants to pick the Saints, as you know. But this will be a very shaky, but still undefeated Kansas City team leaving Monday night. I'm going with the Chiefs 17 to Saints 13.
All right, Lewis. Well, that will wrap up our highlighted games, but we still have a bunch to get to. Let's go ahead and start off with the Carolina Panthers going to Chicago to play the Bears. The Bears favored by 4. Who are you leaning, Lewis?
Well, another Andy Dalton revenge game. He's 0-1 so far. This Bears defense has been so electric. We saw what they did in Chicago last week against the Rams. And I just think that they're going to replicate a lot of that same success. They just have the guys in the secondary to really match up with these underrated Panthers receivers who had a lot of success the past 2 weeks with Andy Dalton as quarterback. But now there's enough tape on Andy Dalton that I feel like this defense can feel a lot more confident in their assignments. So I do like the Bears in this one. A lower scoring game, but I'm going to go Bears 20 to Panthers 10.
Yeah, this Panthers offense has really been rejuvenated with Andy Dalton coming in, but that defense is still sorry as all hell. And so I think this is just another great spot for Caleb Williams. He played solid last week, maybe not those explosive plays, but we still saw him create in the pocket. I think you do the same again this week. Maybe a huge DeAndre Swift game again. I like the Bears at home 26-20.
Also, DJ Moore revenge game against the team that traded him. David Tepper is watching this game in absolute shambles, seeing the guys he traded for his benched quarterback, Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, going dumb. I think it's going to be a tough watch for Panthers fans. Moving on to a very ugly game. The Miami Dolphins going to New England to face the Patriots. Patriots are favored in this game, Laraib. And I think this is the game. Now, on paper, Jacoby Brissett is still the starter. But I think the way I've seen Jacoby Brissett play 4 weeks of football now, he just has not been impressive whatsoever, just not pushing the ball down the field at all. And defenses are just keying in on these short passes. I think Drake May plays in this game and plays well against this Miami defense. That's just been downright awful, especially against the rush. I think Ramondre has a good game, and this Patriots defense locks down Tyler Huntley and this ragtag group of Miami players. So I am going with the Patriots. Ugly, low scoring game. Patriots 10 to Dolphins 6.
Yeah, the Dolphins look like a beached whale on Monday Night Football. You see them panning over to the sidelines. Jalen Waddle sitting by himself. Tyreek Hill is throwing his helmet onto the ground, and Tyler Huntley's playing like Tyler Huntley. And so this is just a bad spot for this Dolphins team. Week 8 cannot come quick enough for them. But I think for the Patriots, their defense gets it done, and Antonio Gibson or Ramondre Stevenson do just enough on the rushing attack to win 16 to 13.
All right, next game up on the noon slate, Laraib. We have the Cleveland Browns traveling to Washington to face the Commanders. Commanders favored by 3 in this game. Jaden Daniels, talk of the town. He's been electric so far. Laraib, why is this a 3-point game?
Honestly, I have no clue. This Browns team lost to the Raiders last week without their 2 best players. Now they're traveling to Washington and in a spot against Jaden Daniels, who looks like he might be the MVP so far throughout 4 weeks, throwing the ball very well, not many turnovers, if any, I think, and just distributing the ball very well. Now, Myles Garrett comes in this game and just wreaks havoc on this Commanders offensive line, and you tell me Deshaun Watson can keep it close. Maybe that's what Vegas is thinking is going to happen, but I don't think so. I think the Commanders handle business, and Deshaun Watson gets put in a jail cell, giving the Commanders 27-20.
You're going to hate me for this, Laraib. You're actually probably going to love this. But I just don't like what I'm seeing right now with Vegas. Why is this a 3-point game? What am I missing here? I've watched both these teams for 4 weeks. One team's seriously on the incline, the other one's seriously on the decline. What am I missing? I'm going with the Browns, Laraib. I just call me crazy. I actually think, and I talked about this, I think Deshaun Watson played his best game of the season last week against the Raiders. Just 2 big plays negated because of penalty and just stupid misfortune drops by Amari Cooper. And I just feel like this Commanders defense still leaves a lot to be desired. I don't know. It's just a weird gut feeling I've had looking at this game. I think this is the first legitimate defense that Jaden Daniels is facing. So I feel like he kind of comes back down to earth. And I think Cleveland wins this game. I don't know why. I don't know. I've given you some reasons. I don't feel confident in this one. And this could very well lose me the week. But Vegas knows something that we don't. So I'm going with the Browns. I'm going with the Browns 23 to Commanders 17.
Frankie Louvu. Remember his name. He's going to have a huge game. Frankie Louvu. Huge Deshaun Watson sack to end the game.
Let's go ahead and move on to our next game. The 2-2 Colts traveling to Jacksonville to face the 0-4 Jaguars, Laraib. I'm picking the Jaguars here. They're 0-4, but I talked about in our last episode, they could easily be 3-1. They've let 3 games just slip by because of just bad coaching and malpractice. But now you're playing a Colts team at home that, Anthony Richardson coming back. He is the starter. If Joe Flacco was starting, I'd probably pick the Colts in this one. I'll be honest with you. But I feel like just the desperation level here from the Jacksonville Jaguars that they could they need this win. I think they're going to go for it. I think they finally pick up their first win of the season to no longer have an unbeaten or a team that hasn't lost or hasn't won, excuse me. And so I am going with Jacksonville 23 to 17.
Yeah, this kind of feels like the spot where they pick up an easy win, especially since the Colts have not won a road game in Jacksonville since 2012.
Mm-hmm.
For over a decade, they haven't won a game in Jacksonville. I don't think that changes this week, especially with the banged up Anthony Richardson and a hungry Jaguars team. Giving the Jaguars 24-17.
All right. Next, we have a 3:00 game. We have the Las Vegas Raiders traveling to Denver to play the Broncos. Broncos favored by 2.5 points at home. No Devontae Adams in this game. He's dealing with a really bad hamstring, I think they're calling it. Prayers up to him. I hope he can recover as soon as possible until he can catch passes for Derek Carr. Anyway, I think Denver has the advantage in this game. I think they have a lot of momentum going their way. This defense has been playing out of their mind. Looks like no Max Crosby for this game. And the offense just needs to do enough. I thought we had our best Javonte Williams performance of the season last week. If they can build onto that, getting Cortland Sutton a lot more involved in this offense, Just don't make mistakes against this Raiders team. I think you can win this game at home, move to 3-2. I like the Broncos in this game, 20 to Raiders 10.
Huge shout out to Vance Joseph. He's been coaching very well for this Broncos defense. You know, they shut down Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay. They shut down Aaron Rodgers in New York. They've been playing outstanding football. Now you get the Raiders at home in that Mile High. Give me the Broncos 16-13.
All right, Laura, let's go ahead to another divisional matchup. We have the Arizona Cardinals traveling to San Francisco to face the 49ers. 49ers favored by 7.5 points at home. Cardinals just looked lifeless last week against the Commanders. Now trying to bounce back against this 49ers team that's getting a little healthier. Brock Purdy playing very good football right now. I just don't have the confidence in the Cardinals to pick them in this upset. I think the 49ers are starting to figure out things. Getting Jawan Jennings a lot more involved in the offense has proven to work. You know, Brandon Ayuk is just still not figuring it out right now. And Jordan Mason just really effective on the ground, especially against this weak Commanders defensive front. I'm going with the 49ers in this game, 30 to Cardinals 17.
Yeah, the past 2 weeks, this Cardinals offense and defense has just not lived up to my expectation at the very least. Kyler Murray just, after that huge game against the Rams in week 2, just really hasn't shown me much. And now against a 49ers team who are at home, I like the 49ers big 31-17.
All right, Laura, moving on to our CBS game of the week, I believe. We have the Green Bay Packers traveling to Los Angeles to face the Rams. Rams reeling right now, still dealing with all these bad injuries. Green Bay getting Jordan Love back, put up a decent performance in the second half against the Vikings, looking to build onto that. And I think they will, Laura. I think Jordan Love is just a really good quarterback. He looked healthy. At first, he looked a little shaky, and people thought maybe they should have waited another week, but he finished the game strong, and I think he carries that into this game against the Rams defense that just has not been effective, especially against, rushing the passer, and I don't think they'll be able to get to Jordan Love a lot in this game. Look for a big Romeo Doubs game in this one against, who's the corner for the Rams? Tre'Davious White. I think he's going to feast on that matchup, so I'm picking the Packers 27 to Rams 20.
Yeah, I think this Rams defense has given up the most explosive plays so far throughout the season. Just rattled with injuries on offense and defense. Look for the Packers to have a huge bounce back game. Give me the Packers 33-20. Also, Matt LaFleur 4-0 in his career against Sean McVay. I think that's going to be 5-0 after this weekend.
All right, Laurel, let's go to our final game on the slate. We have the New York Football Giants traveling to Seattle to face the Seahawks. Seahawks coming off a nail-biting, a very exciting loss for their first loss of the season against Detroit. Coming back home, they're favored by 6.5 here, Laraib. Who do you like?
Of course, I got to go with my Hawks. They're going to be getting a couple of pieces back on defense. Boye Mafe, Uchenna Nwosu, Leonard Williams, and Byron Murphy, all those guys. Now, still, they're going to be banged up, and so maybe not the greatest performance out of all of them, but just to have those guys on the field is going to make a world of difference. And then you're facing Daniel Jones, who can't throw the ball more than 20 yards down the field. I think the Seahawks kill him here, 30-24. A late touchdown makes it closer.
I think the Giants win this game, Laura. They're in the red zone. This Seahawks red zone defense, and I get it, they were missing some defensive pieces, but the Lions, who have been a pretty shaky red zone team to start the season, they had very good success against this Seahawks defense. And we saw that the Giants last week, coming off extended rest, where the Seahawks less rest Monday Night Football, that I just think that this offense finds a way to get the ball into the end zone. I think Geno comes back down a little bit to earth. Not saying he's past the pumpkin watch. He's just a good quarterback. But I think this Giants offense can have success in the red zone. I think this defensive front of Kayvon Thibodeau, who had his best game of the season, Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence, causes a lot of problems for the Seahawks offensive line, which has been very shaky. And I think they get the upset in Seattle. Daniel Jones goes to Seattle and wins 23 to Seahawks 21.
All right. Well, that will wrap it up for all of our predictions for week 5. If you want to see our takes for the Thursday night game between the Bucs and the Falcons, go ahead and listen to our last episode. Before we sign off, we want to give you our locks and upsets and best bets of the week. I'm going to go and kick it off with my upset, and that is your New Orleans, St. Louis, traveling to Kansas City. I think this is a huge spot for them. They've been playing very well all season long. If they can just get out of their own way, I think this is a huge win for them on the road against Kansas City.
And my upset is the New York Football Giants, Laraib. Daniel Jones, you know him, road warrior.
Yeah.
Harris is the Seattle team. I feel great about it. And then my lock of the week, I also feel outstanding about the 0-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. They're due. You talked about how the Chiefs are due for a loss. The Jaguars are due for a win here. You mentioned the Colts haven't won there since 2012. I don't think that changes. Give me Jacksonville as my lock.
And for my lock, I'm going with the Green Bay Packers, who, with Coach Matt LaFleur, undefeated against Sean McVay with that banged up Rams team. I think there's a huge spot for them to get back and advance to 3-2.
All right, and then best bets of the week, Laraib. I kind of teased it in our previews, but I think this Dallas-Pittsburgh line, 44.5. I know I've been making a lot of money on these Pittsburgh unders, but I think, Justin Fields getting more confidence. They're going to be able to do a lot against this weak Dallas front. And I think that they score a lot, and then cheap Dallas touchdowns at the end can make this thing interesting. So I have the over 44.5.
And for my best bet, my first one to cash this year, give me the Raiders Broncos under 35.5. I think this Broncos defense is playing amazing. And the Raiders, who can you trust out there without, Devontae Adams at quarterback? You're not going to run the ball with Zamir White, I'll tell you that much. And so give me that 35.5 under.
All right, Laurent. Well, that's going to do it for our week 5 predictions. As you mentioned, Thursday Night Football, go check out our last video. We will be back here on Tuesday to break down this full week 5 slate. So we're super excited about that. But for now, I think we're all good. Laraib, anything you would say before we head out of here?
I think that's the First to Go podcast signing off.
Peace.